If your syndication team or investment fund team has more than just you working in it, it's probably helpful to think about roles and responsibilities. Who should be doing what to make sure that there's not some problem down the road that ultimately is probably going to impact your investors. If you guys can't get along, the sponsors and the managers can't figure it out, then it's going to trickle down and there's going to be problems for your investors, which could make your whole situation a lot worse. So why not deal with those things up front? In this video, we're going to go through the 7 different main categories of roles and the responsibilities of them to give you a place to start thinking about them. To give you a place to say, okay, well, maybe this person should be responsible for this or this person should be responsible for that. My name is Tilden Moschetti. I am a syndication attorney. I help a bunch of syndicators, investment funds, put together their legal documents and form their investments, right? So put together those syndications and those funds. As I go along the way, I see a lot of different teams come together. Teams of 2, teams of 5, teams of 10. When I see that, one thing I immediately think, if it's more than one person, is we might have some sort of thing where we want to identify the roles and responsibilities early so that the syndicators can do their job better. To make them so more confident in what they're supposed to be doing so that nobody gets mad at them, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we just all want to do the best we can. We want to make the most amount of money for ourselves, certainly make the most amount of money for our investors, so we keep getting investments from them so we make more money for ourselves. We can help that process by identifying what the roles and responsibilities are between the team members. Now, I've also done a number of syndications for myself. I've worked with a number of teams myself. Let me tell you, the teams that I've been in where we did not define a clear set of roles and responsibilities, something always happened. Something where people felt like they were being taken advantage of, or people were not doing the right job, or whatever it was. Setting those things up early is what I do now all the time if I'm going to be in a team, and you should think about that too. So let's go through exactly what kind of categories I think are useful for you when you're setting up a team. There's 7 of them. One such role and responsibility that I think is useful to go through is investment and finance. This is a syndication or investment fund, so obviously finance, investments are very closely coupled with exactly what you're doing. So in this category, what we're thinking about are things like acquisitions. How are you going to determine if something is a good buy or not? Due diligence. How are we going to make sure that it's a good buy so that something doesn't fall through the cracks? Something that we're buying is actually what we're buying. Looking at the portfolio as a whole. If you're buying an investment fund and everything's identical, you're not getting the benefits of diversity. You're not getting the benefits of different kinds of assets, which could lead to better results with lower risk. Acting as the chief financial officer, the one who really is in control of the money, also goes into this category. Also in this category is risk manager, like identifying what risks there are to the investment. It's not always things that come out of due diligence. It might be governmental. It might be things that are just happening locally. If it's a real estate deal, maybe it's something that's happening in the property itself and you need to get insurance for it to cover that risk. And lastly, it's that exit planning. So who is going to make the kind of determination that really maybe it's time for us to make the sale? Maybe it's time, this is when we can make the maximum amount of profit for our investors and ultimately for ourselves. The second category is investor relations. Investor relations not only is the talking to investor bit, but it's acting as a point person for investors to come to. Now, most of the time, this person is also involved in the sales process. They're the ones who's actually raising the capital. They're going out to the market, they're making sure that those investors are there, and they might have multiple people on your team who do this role. At the end of the day, I would recommend that you also have one person who's the key contact. This is the key person who investors can ask questions to if they have them. They may be responsible for also the communications to investors, writing out those quarterly emails to update them. And that will invite more people to communicate back in. I think it's helpful for investors to know, okay, if there's a problem, I talk to this person. So the investor relations role is pretty wide, but it also is a critical part. So not only is it the capital raising, that's absolutely fundamentally critical, but it's also those other things, making sure that you have that key contact person. Another key role that's in a lot of syndication and investment fund teams is that operational and project management. So if you're doing anything more than just buying specific properties and selling specific properties, there's probably something that's going on their assets that needs some sort of coordination and some sort of work. If not, there's definitely still some things that happen with your team, right? So there's multiple pieces to this. So part of your operations might be the portal software that you're using, making sure that every investor can log in, making sure that all those things are there. But also on it is this project management side. Now, long ago, I had a project management background. I was a certified project manager, and actually it is a fundamental way to make sure that projects follow through very specific steps. I would suggest that you adopt that same kind of methodology that's built into project management to make sure that your projects go the way they're going. Now that project might look something like rehab on a building or the M&A on the purchase of a business or something like that. Or it might be just as simple of, hey, how are we going to make sure that the marketing communication for the sale goes out because we decided we want to do a vote. So there's multiple pieces, different kinds of ways this comes in. But the focus of this kind of role or these kind of roles is that operational and project management side. Another function that's useful, and it may not be a whole person, it might be just delegated to one of the other people within your team, is compliance and legal. So obviously as a lawyer, that's what I care about a great deal, but it's also making sure that those blue sky filings are getting served, making sure that the documents being prepared by your syndication attorney are prepared correctly and in the right way and in a way that's useful. Making sure that everything looks right and that all the kind of reporting that needs to go on for your syndication happens in the timely manner. They may also be interested in, well, when are tax filings due and when is the K-1 due? They may work with the finance person in order to ensure that taxes are done on time or as best as you can. So that compliance piece really makes sure, okay, as a team, are we doing everything that we need to do in order to be compliant? A lot of times you'll bring in outside counsel, like a syndication attorney like myself, in order to make sure that all those things happen. You might also coordinate with an accountant who specializes in syndications or investment funds or real estate or what have you. Another key role is accounting and bookkeeping. Now this, to many of us, is not the most glamorous role, but a lot of times it has fallen on me, so I do recognize that it is there and I recognize it's a lot of work. So the accountant and bookkeeping role is very critical to a syndication. I mean, picture this. You have an investor who gave you a really large amount of money, $100, $200, $300, $1 million. I mean, that's not uncommon. By me saying 100, 200, I mean 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, $1 million. It's a lot of cash. They need to know that their money is being treated properly. You need to know that the books are being kept in the right way. I have investors in every single deal that I do for myself. There is going to be one or two people that want a lot of detail on those books, and they should have it. You should be able to get a call from an investor requesting a copy of the general ledger and send it to them right away. What does that do? It builds trust, which means that they're likely to be investors again in the future because they see not only are you doing everything by the book, but you're so responsive that you can provide those at a heartbeat because you care about their money and the custody of it. One role that's oftentimes overlooked is a tenant relations, and you can think of it as a human resources role. So human resources role would be something like, is everybody on the team working in the best way possible? If we have contractors or if we have other employees, are they being treated in the right way? Are they onboarded properly or offboarded properly? Are we making sure money is happening in the right way for them? Those sort of things. But also, one thing that is oftentimes overlooked is tenant relations. Now, if you're doing a real estate syndication, more likely than not, unless it's development, you have tenants. The tenant role, the care of tenants is different than the care of investors. The person who cares about the feelings and the business and all those things of the tenant are probably not the same as the investor relations person. Yes, you can combine them, but it's oftentimes not. Oftentimes it's not the best place, because if you have tenants who are looking up, who you are and what you do. If you have somebody who's just in the investment relations section doing tenant management, the tenant's not going to feel that you've got their best interest at heart. Now, granted, you don't actually have their total best interest at heart. Ultimately, you care mostly about your investors. But good tenant relations is also very fundamental. We want them to know that you're there and that you're listening to them, and not just whatever for the sake of investors, right? That builds trust and loyalty amongst those tenants, which really is the lifeblood of your fund if you're doing a real estate fund that's not development. So those are the 7 key different roles and responsibility hierarchy that I see. Those 7 different categories apply in every syndication. You should think through those and decide whether or not they make sense for you and how you're going to solve the specific problems within them. Who's going to be responsible for them? Now, obviously, if you're working for yourself, you're doing all of those. If you're not working for yourself, if it's not just one of you, if you've got 2 people or you've got 100 people, well, 100 would be very big, but if you've got more than one, you need to have this conversation about exactly who's going to be doing what. The reason is to make sure that feelings are happening properly, that roles are getting taken care of, that nothing is getting missed, and making sure that everybody also feels good about it. Now, I've been talking a lot about feelings in this video, and I understand that to some of you it may be, why is he talking about feelings? This is a very logical thing, and it is. But at the end of the day, we are emotional creatures. If you feel like you're getting slighted, you're not going to be happy, and that not feeling happy is going to translate to not making as much money for your investors, which is going to translate to not making as much money for you. My name is Tilden Moschetti. I am a syndication attorney, and I know these things because I've also got the experience of having done deals myself, having put these things together, working with teams myself in the trenches, having the arguments over roles and responsibilities. Now, I'm sure I can help you if you're putting a Regulation D offering together under Rule 506B or 506C. I welcome your call. Let's talk about your project and see what I can do for you.